the AI slop is almost becoming those commercials we want to fast forward through because it doesn't feel real. It's like, what are you going to sell me? It's just too perfect. It's too much. I think we are going to circle because just as humans, we don't want to connect with slop or the AI. We want to connect with other humans. I think that's where social was part of like, we're seeing a little bit of imperfections. There was always, something raw, real, and mistakes would happen. And so I think we will circle back to that. Well, I think slop will be those things, something we kind of fast forward through commercials. Like, what are you selling me? What do you want? I want the real person.
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Canada Now, the show where we explore the ideas, people, and momentum shaping Canada's future, from innovation and entrepreneurship to culture, community, and the way we work. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. Today, we're diving into a topic I know a lot of founders, creatives, and leaders wrestle with. How do you build a brand and a business that can actually stay focused and thrive in a world that pulls you in 1,000 different directions? And to help us unpack that, we have someone who has spent more than 25 years living at the intersection of design, storytelling, and strategy. My guest today is Brady Dahmer, brand strategist, creative director, author of Blind Spots, the Marketing Handbook, and co-founder of Tropoly, an agency where he helps companies sharpen their positioning, avoid costly mistakes, and build brands with real momentum. If you've been anywhere near Vancouver's creative or innovation scenes over the last decade, you've probably crossed paths with Brady's work. He was marketing director for TEDx Vancouver, co-founded the Projecting Change Film Festival, helped shape major events and cultural experiences across the city, and has supported everyone from scrappy startups to global brands. Brady has the rare mix of creative instinct and business discipline, and he's seen enough behind-the-scenes chaos to know exactly where companies get stuck, what they overlook, and how they can get out of their own way. Today, we're going to talk about brand strategy, blind spots, the future of agency work, fractional leadership, Vancouver's evolving culture, and what it really takes to create clarity in a distracted world. Brady, welcome to Canada Now. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is great.
I'm so excited to have this chat with you. Brand strategy, and how to do it right has been something on my mind, especially over the last several years as things are sort of changing so much in the landscape.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I would really like to help provide the audience with a little bit of context. So context about who you are, your background, and in particular, let's start maybe a little bit with the nature of your work.
Awesome. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. This is really great. My background is very much in, it's design centric. I love design. I've been insatiably curious my whole life. My mom hated me at Christmas because I'd play with the toys for, an hour and take them apart and see how they worked. I was always really interested in process and how things were engineered, how things were made. And that led me down the path to design. I just loved the physical things, but also the visual things, but also how it kind of made me feel and the emotional state of it. So I always was really curious and wanted to explore, like, can I do this myself? So in that led me down to a path of I was going to get into something in the creative arts field. And then I had this high school teacher in grade 9 who brought his wife in, who worked in the advertising agency. And this is like first semester, grade 9. And this is, I grew up in Ontario, so this is our first high school experience. And here I was going to become an architect or, something in the fine arts. And then this person was opened me up to, like, there's an entire industry called advertising and marketing. And that was just like blew my head off. And like, from that second on, I knew exactly what I wanted to do because it was an intersection of insight and like imagery with language and any kind of like artistic expression kind of thing. So that was essentially the start of my path getting into marketing. I really wanted to learn as much as I could. So, growing up in Ontario, where you go, the creative center was Toronto. That the agency world, that's if you're going to go in, it's the mini New York. It's our version of it. So diving into that and working with a lot of people. One of my very first mentors too was the boss of our company, and he was solely instrumental in helping me from a creative standpoint, but also from getting me involved in the community. And we'll talk about some of our projects later, but he was very much of, the first month I worked there, he was like, hey, it's really great that you're here, but I need you to be, he was like, we're going to get you into more stuff. I want you to be part of the community. I've signed you up to be, on a board somewhere. I was like, here, I'm like 20 years old being like on a junior board somewhere. So I ended up jumping on to a junior board at the Toronto Film Festival. And that was like another amazing eye-opening experience. And some people ask me, like, how did I get to where I am? How do I know so many people? How am I so like social? It's like, I learned to get out there and be a part of the community. And that was one of the biggest lessons he taught me is is be a part of a board, be a part of the community, and share your experience. So from then on, I learned that I could use some of my skills, kind of for good, I guess, to some extent, like raising money for social issues and just raising money for things like that. So that was the I guess that's kind of the foundation of being a part of the sort of community as a whole. That's my way to kind of give back, but also to share my experience, my skills, and also just loving what I do from a design standpoint. So from there, and it's a short story long, but this is very much I jumped into the agency world, worked in it for many years, and then from there I decided just to kind of go up my own and start my own agency. And the rest of this, as I say, is kind of history. Still this day, I love waking up and designing something or creating something from scratch, from someone's idea, from a business idea of like, hey, we want to go somewhere. And I love the whole sort of idea of helping them, see their idea and their sort of like their vision come to life.
I will say that I experienced some of your services. It's been many years ago now. Frankly, an ex-boyfriend of mine who I was doing business with, and he had hired you to help them, like his team, totally rebrand. And so I saw some of the creative process and some of the decision-making process at that time. I was really impressed. And that's why, I started following you and your journey and some of the things you were doing at that time. But I am wondering what you're seeing in terms of the shifting landscape and like where are people and professionals and companies coming to you, for example, for help? Are you seeing people usually more at the beginning of their journeys when they know they need to really figure out their foundation? Are you seeing kind of mid-journey folks wanting to create a new narrative or new voice or new position in a market? And how, I guess what I'm hoping to dive into throughout our conversation is look at how that may have looked differently, say 10 years ago versus going into 2026.
Yeah.
So like, I'll let you start wherever you feel is appropriate for that.
At the beginning, we were taking anybody in and only to learn like some people, depending on their stage, really could use our services, weren't ready for our services. But then that took a long time for us to learn. Part of my thinking and part of my journey, even this with the new agency that I've started, is it goes back to as I started to learn and make some of these mistakes because we worked with clients who really weren't ready or they weren't really responsive to what we were doing. We started to create some templates and some structure around really understanding, who our clients are, basically helping develop processes for that. And not only just for us, but for them to understand who they were, what they wanted, what they needed. Marketing is a huge amount of a client's budget. I've started to become, over the last kind of, let's say 15 years, as like a data-driven designer. And what I mean by that is like understanding what's going to drive a really positive, really successful outcome for clients. And when I say data-driven, it's like I love the information, the insights, and to build off of that so I can create something that's going to be unique, but also that's going to propel them, further, faster. Like if they don't understand, I don't understand. A lot of sort of startups maybe not understand what I need. So to go back to that question, as we started to develop these tools and these processes that, we would put our clients through and kind of like, let's just say it was a little bit of a test. So if they didn't kind of pass the test or they didn't know all the answers, like who's your target market, what do they want, what do they need? And if they can't answer that, we can help them answer that, or they need to go back to the drawing board and figure that out. Because otherwise we're just like, we're just throwing, blindly of marketing. Like we're just making stuff look pretty and not functional. And that's been a core belief of mine. Like make it both. It can be both beautiful but also it needs, and functional at the same time.
Do you see that as a bit of a shift? Like what do people that are looking for brand strategies today think about brand? Like, how do they understand what brand even means? And has that shifted? Because I feel like I observe that what brand means, at least in culture, seems to be changing. But I'm not sure if, founders or decision makers necessarily are tapped into that.
Most aren't, because it's like the whole analogy, like working on a company versus working in a company. Like so many people like work in it, and it's a little siloed, right? Mm-hmm. So and they're just hearing what everybody's saying within it, but not externally. And the old description of what a brand is what other people say your company is, not sort of what you think it is. But you can help drive that narrative. Part of our process and what we do is we found like can we take their own ego out of it? We've sat down with so many clients that are in love with their product, not in love with the outcome of what their product does. And what's different is like they're so it's like when someone builds something, they love what it does and in the process to which, how they built that, just like a piece of software or whatever it is. They're so enamored by the product that they've done, they don't know how to sell it or how it's the impact it's going to have externally, which is really what they should fall in love with. And that's kind of the brand, that's the marketing side of it, is be able to share it and sell it and sell it, but sort of like communicate the benefits of what it does, not just like how it was made. A lot of people who make things they're in love with their product or service, but not so much like, they got to fall in love with their client, understand who their client is and what's going to bring them there. Because there was a reason they made it in coming up, solving that, like, what problem does it solve? But the brand, it's not really shifting. It's just there's different touch points for it now, and I think a lot of people don't know where and how to use it. And this comes down to that data-driven insight of understand where your clients are showing up, understand what touch points are going to be like with social, are they just using it from a consumer standpoint or just from an entertainment standpoint? Or are they actually buying, like, really understand your user and who they are, at what point or where are they making their decisions, and make sure you just show up where they're making those decisions. The more you know, the better decisions you make, the more exploratory and more fun you can have.
So what are key questions then that you ask to help unpack that with clients, especially if they're coming in and maybe haven't given it enough thought? Like, how do you take something that's a little bit anecdotal and make it into more of a data-driven process?
Good question. For everyone, it's kind of different. This is a little bit deeper, but have you ever heard of the exercise called 7 Whys?
Oh, sort of. I think so, but I'll yeah.
It's 7 or the 5 whys. You keep on asking after every answer. You just ask why, and we want to connect with clients like this. Why is that? So what it does is it gets you down from this really kind of high level thinking to really the core of what it's really about. Short answer to this is like, just keep on asking why, or keep on thinking through things, not just like, who are your clients? Well, we're 30 to 45-year-olds that, they'll like to swim. Why, like, again, but go deeper, like when are they swimming? Why? Keep on asking those questions, and not to be hyper specific, but the more insight you can kind of find, those might lead to some really great marketing insights, or really interesting places you can kind of show up, or really creative places you can show up. And like, this is, so the more the more insights, but keep on asking why and dig a little deeper, be a little more specific. That's really where we tell our clients, if they're not specific about things, we kind of like, you find more specificity, or we just can't help you. It's too broad of a stroke. You can be big and broad, but only you've got the budget to do so. If your startup has got a small budget, the more specific, the more niche you can get, the better outcomes you can get, because you can kind of take those dollars and make them worth more. I think now, with all the different variations of platforms and touch points that we have, and all the options that we have, and how inexpensive they are, understand it and become like own that one channel, own that one group. And there's so many, and they're so easy, and they're so accessible, but they only work if you really fully understand who your client is and what's going to get them to drive what their pain point is and what drives them to make those decisions.
I'm thinking, like, so many people probably still think a lot about brand, and this is maybe just an ignorant statement, but just as like logos and maybe taglines and colors. But clearly now, I think what I'm hearing you say is there's so many touch points now, depending on a business, and how an organization or a company is making their potential customers or current customers kind of feel at those touch points, right?
Yep.
I am wondering, with that being said, how much, if you've given any thought, and if you haven't, it's okay. But I'm curious about, there's not a lot of clarity anymore between like leadership and their businesses. Like, if there's folks who are showing up in very public ways, let's call it, say, a CEO or a founder, like they have their own brand, whether they know it or not, right? They have their reputation, they have the way that they show up. I'm just wondering about that kind of, if there's a dichotomy there, like how a business's brand can show up versus, say, a leader's brand can show up, and whether or not leaders and founders today are giving much thought to that. Does it matter? Like, are you giving thought to that piece at all with the clients that you work with?
Great question. And I got to give a shout out to one of our local great companies and leaders. But first, I'll answer the question being like, it's really dependent on, again, every company's different, because of who the leader is, what their messaging is, who they are, how connected they are to the company itself. Brian Scudamore from 1-800 Got Junk. Like he is the company is him. Like you still think about the company, but they kind of live and breathe together. Like he is such a great, like he is a leader in growing the company. Like look at what he's done with, that one plus all the other subsidiary companies that he's built out. But he is the company, and the company is like he's so tied to it. He talks about marketing, talks about leadership. Like he's outside of that, but they live together. And that's kind of, if for every company, it's different. For someone that wants to be a thought leader, just think about how that integrates with the company, and make a plan. Think this through, make a strategy around it, test it out a little bit. And that's kind of where I'd sort of like play in a little bit and see if, it's one thing to think you want to be a thought leader. And as we know, go and talk and speak. And it's another thing to kind of how much work and how much effort and what the outcome might be. And I would ask as a leader in that, like, what do you want to get out of that? Like, what is it, not from a company standpoint, but what really is driving you to do this? What's the value? What's the value in it for you? What's the value in it for company? And just think and try to plan it and map those things out.
You mentioned budgets when it comes to marketing, and one of the themes I've run into over the last year is really this shift into more openness and awareness around the idea of like fractional service and fractional work. Until you and I chatted a couple of weeks ago, I was really thinking about fractional work more in the context of like solopreneurs. So sort of the person that might wear a CFO hat for 3 different companies, sort of a thing.
Yep.
Now, I'm speaking of folks from lots of different sides of business and sectors, and it sounds like there's a lot of this now happening in different areas of business. And what I didn't really think about was this fractional service from an agency perspective.
Yeah.
And so in chatting with you, looking through some of your stuff, it's very clearly stated that that's one of your like one of the offers that Tropoly brings. And so I'd love to know a little bit about what that looks like, what that means for a company bringing somebody like you in, and how does that differentiate from maybe what might have been seen as more of a like traditional consulting type of relationship? Like, what's the nuance there?
Great question. Again, I'm gonna base this on like we did that research. Like we weren't gonna chase a shiny object, the latest thing. Like everybody's using fractional everywhere, but we're like, okay, let's create that spreadsheet. Let's look at what the value is, and let's go into some of these big things. Some of those, what do the numbers look like? And it's going to take time for people to realize maybe what the cost of some roles on their business when they lose someone of great tenure. Some of the numbers we're pulling from the recruitment companies, or some of the sort of like management companies, where the average tenure of a CMO, for within a company, is 18 months. So the average CMO will stay at a company for, on average, 18 months. The average salary of a CMO is between $200,000 to $300,000. So let's look at those numbers there. The average time it takes to hire a CMO, like one of high tenure, is probably anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And then you stack on the recruitment fees, which is on average is 25%. So even at looking at all those numbers, so even looking at what the recruitment cost is on a $200,000, on a $200,000 hire, there's I'm mathing now again, but it's a lot. So hey, your recruitment fees above, paying for for someone's salary, getting them up to speed, and then build, if they don't have a team, building that team around them. So you're looking only for them to last, if even let's say it takes them 4 months, you still have 14 months left of their, on average, a tenure for them to stay at the company. So a little over a year and a bit. So in the larger the company, the larger sort of the marketing plans you have, and usually they'll last, when you look at a rollout, anywhere from, on average, like 1 to 3 years with a branding marketing role, like that's pretty average. But if your marketing director is only there for the first year of it and bringing someone else up to speed, and if they leave and there's a gap, what happens with the company? I'd have companies kind of look at and balance and weigh what it would cost to have a CMO come in. For instance, like both my partners, Neil and Mark, that's what they do. So they'll they do everything a CMO will do, and we have a team underneath us. We only get paid for how much they use us. Like you don't maybe need a full-time CMO for some of the companies.
Or performance-based.
And 100% performance-based. It's like, hey, if that doesn't work, you can move to the next one. Think about hiring and firing someone, which is incredibly difficult. Like I've had employees in the past too, and dealing with HR and so having a fractional CMO, if it doesn't kind of bringing him on, if the culture doesn't match or the personalities, you can sort of but you can kind of move on and find someone that's a better fit. But for us, it was definitely highly advantageous for any kind of startup or someone that really needs a high level person who doesn't really kind of have the budget or the time to hire someone at $200,000 to $300,000 as a high level CMO for the next level of their project. And they, for someone who doesn't need someone, full time, and maybe even comes with a team underneath them, so that, for us at Tropoly, it is, they get the benefits of having a CMO and an entire marketing department all in one hire. So that's really where, the CMO kind of comes in. If they've, and again, it varies from company to company. Like some people may have a junior or a mid, and we've got that flexibility of filling out much more that marketing and strategy department for them. In a way, a single sort of CMO might not. A single hire might not.
Yeah.
The cost is so much, it's so substantial. Like what we could do with that extra, $50,000 or $100,000 in just that hiring fees alone. And that's just to hire someone, to find someone, like what companies could spend that on in a marketing or any other department, so it's a cost savings all around.
Are you noticing there's more of an appetite for this, more of an awareness for this style of like collaborative work?
It definitely is. It's going to take time because I think a lot of companies, because they're senior positions, there's always been that we need someone there. It's kind of like having someone in a desk, or we need a full-time person. Thankfully, not thankfully, but the pandemic showed us that there's a lot, like working off-site and working in other locations has really helped, I think, from a company standpoint, being able to hire someone they might not have, because we live in Vancouver and because it's a small like ecosystem of everybody, outsourcing to some larger cities where there are more higher level sort of I would say consultants, but they can hire up and hire better.
I'm wondering what you're thinking about AI, and I apologize if that's an annoying, maybe hot topic question, but I think it's the one thing I'm curious about in every sector. Like, how are you thinking about AI as it's emerging, how it impacts your work, how it impacts maybe your customers? Like, how is that changing their behavior, if at all? I guess what I'm thinking in my brain is folks are like, I can create my own brand. I'm using ChatGPT. I'm putting my strategy together. I've spend a ton of time, DIYing it.
Yep.
And frankly, I think there's a lot of room for that. So that's just my opinion. But from a more of a scaled perspective, what is it you're seeing right now, if anything? And how are you thinking about, the next 3 years?
Yep. 3 years is a little far away, but yeah, like, the pace to which it's moving and changing, and I love it, and I love the fact that my clients have access to it now. It's creating a division between people who are just kind of faking their way through it and people who can actually like use it now. Again, talking about data-driven design, it's like I can now actually ask my clients for more data. I can get more from my clients and better insights. And if I don't do it, if I don't use AI and all this stuff to do that research, I can get my clients to go do that for me. I can ask them specific questions and they can go do that research. But really, one of the biggest things with AI and with any kind of new technology or anything else that comes in, it's like you still have to know what questions to ask it. You have to have those insights of what's the answer that you want, or where are you trying to get? And just like the old days when we used to, Google search something for it, would prompt us like, is this what you're looking for? You would almost have to think of like, what words am I going to put in to get me to kind of the place I need to go? You just have to have the experience to know what questions to ask, to know what to prompt, to know what you, it comes down to the blind spots book I wrote. Is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And AI is not going to help us know where those things we don't like, where those blind spots, or where those things that we should be asking, and how to fill in those blanks. From an agency standpoint, I love it because it is, my clients are now getting more insight and can kind of provide me as a designer, as a creator, as someone who can kind of help build their brand. We're just working with more data and more insights. Like now we're looking at, we can look across Canada, we can look into the States, we can now do that research, further and deeper than we ever could before. And part of being in the creative field, and I think this is not going to be easily changed or easily shifted in the near future, is that you still need to figure out what to do with it. It's like you can still, like AI is farming, you still got the ingredients there, but you still need a chef to figure out how those ingredients work together, what proportions to put in, and all those sort of things, where I don't think AI is, in the near future, is going to really be able to kind of figure that out. So it's on the low end, it's really helping a lot of people communicate better. I think for me, I love it because I'm, my brain is such a visual and auditory thing. Like that's just, I always know what I want to say, but it's just finding the words, especially when I'm writing, being nuanced in how I want to say them. It's really helping me because it's just, I know what I want to say. I'll just write that up. So if as for designers and people who are much more like auditory or visual sort of creators, it's amazing because I can kind of linguistically help them. I think any company, any agency, any designer who's not now bringing it in as not just as a help me write an email better, but using it to help them achieve better marketing results, more strategic sort of marketing insights, and more results for their clients. I think those are the ones that's where our competitive edge is, and that's where some of the agencies are going to grow and expand, or we're going to be able to do more because they're going to become more nuanced. Their language become more specific, more niche. Again, it comes like circling back to the conversation before, is like there's all these touch points now. As we know, each touch point, you can't just take an Instagram post and put it in LinkedIn. Like that's a very obvious one of like the communities are different. The language is different. That's a very basic one, but using AI and using it to be a much more in a language of specific, genres or communities or things like that, you can now tweak it based on that. So I'd love it because it can become, you can now understand those communities in those industries and become much more specific in your language. And it will help you understand who they are, what their needs are, what their problems are, what they're trying to solve, where they're showing up. A lot more sort of historical data if it's out there. And then use it to the advantage, really specific advantage. It's like the bomb versus the sniper aspect of it, right? So you can really focus in on something specific and to greatest success of the company. Because if we can speak to one person and really connect with them, that's where again the brand gets built. That's where the you build that sense of trust, which is one of the and that's again that's a huge massive thing right now because we can talk about this further too. Is trust within brand building, and we see so with Sora and all those other the slop that's going out there, the level of trust and everything. I haven't thought about that too deeply, but again, it comes down. It will become a thing. It's the more humanly you connect with somebody, the more you can see things, their problems from their side, the better you connect with them. And I think AI is going to help if used properly. If you use it in a way, if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers, and you'll be able to kind of do that for a company.
And it's interesting. It's for another day, but a side tangent, I suppose. I have a thesis around that, the AI slop stuff.
Yep.
And this kind of likely wave towards like wanting more imperfect, more human, more like less aesthetic kind of storytelling and different ways of connecting. So folks know that whatever they're seeing or hearing or looking at is like real. Not
100%.
So we'll see. That'll be that's TBD.
But I'll add to this because I think I'm going to use a really great example because this is one of your like most favorite people in the world too, and I've always loved the way he does this. I'm gonna who I'm gonna say, but like Gary Vee. At the beginning, like he was like walking and talking with his camera. He's in the back of the car. Like everything was sort of like, hey, just go out there and do it. And like you look at the imperfection of like just say it and do it. It wasn't produced. You're in his office. There is a sense of just realism to it. The AI slop is almost becoming those commercials we want to fast forward through because it doesn't feel real. It's like, what are you going to sell me? What do you like? It's just too perfect. It's too much. There's just not enough. So I think we are going to circle because just as humans, we don't want to connect with slop or the AI. We want to connect with other humans. I think that's where social was part of like, we're seeing a little bit of imperfection stuff because we didn't have the way to, unless it was produce. There was always something raw, real, and mistakes would happen. And so I think we will circle back to that. Well, I think slop will be those things, something we kind of fast forward through commercials, like, what are you selling me? What do you want? I want the real person.
Every once in a while, and maybe this doesn't really tie into brand, but every once in a while I'll catch myself watching a YouTube video that's clearly AI generated. And they've done a good enough job that the tagline, the header, and the general theme captured my interest.
Yep.
And so I'm like, I do want to kind of know what they're going to say, but I have a deep sense of shame. And like the algorithm got me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know there's someone else out there doing this better. And
yeah.
anyways, I want to plug your book for a second.
Yep.
Blind Spots. Remind me when you published that book.
Actually, it's coming up to about a year ago.
Yeah. So about a year. That's what I thought. And so what I'd love to know is, for anyone listening, maybe like one or two takeaways they might expect from reading your book. And then I'm going to follow up with a question around if there's basically anything that you would have added this year that maybe wasn't on your mind then. So let's start with one or two takeaways folks might get from it.
Awesome. Well, it's not so much takeaways, but it came from maybe a better way to explain how best to use this book, and the genesis of it was one of those weeks where I'd gotten 3 calls from someone, and they were in a situation with their designer or with their consultant, and all of them were very easily fixed if they just kind of knew what to ask for. And one was, we designed a book for someone, and this person's our client's illustrator called like in a panic one day because she found some of the illustrations that she had paid for this book, for her book. He was selling pillows on Etsy with some of the patterns, some of the designs, and she's like, "Oh my God, I paid for these." And my first question was, "Well, where's your licensing of them?" And she goes, "Licensing? What do you mean by licensing?" And I'm like, "Well, any illustrator photographer will license their work." And again, didn't even know what I was talking about. Like in the glaze of like, I didn't understand. That was one. And then sad but not sad. It was another person the next, a couple days after, another friend called, and they said, "We just contacted our designer, and we needed to update our brochure for this year. And the brochure, like their hard drive crashed. Basically, they got a sorry, not sorry email from their designer that said, our hard drive crashed, we lost everything. Sorry, we don't have your brochure." And the client's like, "What do you mean you don't have it? Where's it backed up? Like, can we get access to it?" And they're like, "Everything is gone." And so they called me, and they're like, "What do we do?" I'm like, "Where's your versions of it? Where's your backup of it?" All this stuff. Again, it's one of those, they're like, "We don't have them. We expected the designer to have it." And I said, "Well, it's not their responsibility. Did you pay for backup or anything else?" Like, no. So really, all of a sudden I started thinking about going back on all the mistakes I made running a design company, all this things I've heard my friends and clients make, or just the dumb stuff that we only knew beforehand. We would like just some of the simplest stuff. It just asking, and just, again, it comes back to not like, we don't know what we don't know, but sometimes those things can cost us dearly. And with the person whose hard drive got lost, like that's all their photographs, that's their brochures from you, that's all their logos, like all the time and effort now that they have to put into trying to go through old PDFs and things like that. So Blind Spots came out of the whole idea of writing out an entire sort of like from beginning to end of the project for a small business, and working with creatives, just, filling those blanks of all the ways that you could lose, basically time or money in any sort of aspect of a project. It's one of those, if you know, kind of like, it's always good to know, and it's written very quickly. And a shout out to my partner Mark, is that I actually ended up rewriting it because he was a fictional writer, and he's like, it's this whole book is like a checklist, but what happens if someone doesn't? There's nothing. And so in that, every single one of the sort of points within the book, there's about 45 of them, come with like, okay, if you don't do this, here are the implications of this. Feel free to not do this, but also this is possibly how much it could cost you.
Yeah.
If you don't back something up, like, how much did you invest in that project? So in this Blind Spots book, again, it's sort of a what not to do kind of kind of book, but written from beginning to end of a project for a small business startup, and to get more from your creatives, how to hire even creatives better. A lot of the stories I've heard too is like, we hired somebody who was, someone's cousin, or, we all the stories of people that we hire, all those little things that just like, hey, just take a step and just like ask these few questions here. Again, just ask questions. And I've just given bullet points and things like that, but just kind of roughed it roughed in how best to get the most out of your creative, your creative people.
And what do you think you might have added to the book heading into 2026? Is there anything with where the world is or any new learnings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great question. So actually, what I would have added to the book this year are probably some actually AI prompts in there.
Mhm.
So in that, it's like here's how to do this research. When looking at the specific industry, use these. Here's 5 prompts, or here's something to kind of ask AI if you really want to get into it.
Cool. I will make sure to put a link in the show notes so folks can find the book, Blind Spots. And yeah, you heard it here, guys. It's worth taking a peek at and maybe asking yourself some of the questions you might not have known to ask.
It's a very quick and easy read. And that's something I was like, okay, this has got to be read in half an hour kind of thing for small, like understanding who my target audience is too. So it's fine.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned earlier on about your mentor advising you to kind of involve yourself in communities and to participate in various things. I also almost forgot that you were in Toronto. Now you're in Vancouver. So it gives you a little bit of a cross-section, experience throughout the country. But early days, shortly after we met, you were hosting Projecting Change Film Festival. I attended. It was wonderful. It was a big deal. Like, it was really well done. I guess that would have been like, what? I think I had seen something like 2008 to maybe 2013 or something in that span. You did that, and that I'm sure was a huge endeavor. And then following that for quite a few years, leading the charge with TEDx Vancouver. I want to dive a little bit into community and events in the landscape in Vancouver, why you stopped, what you're seeing now. I mean, we don't have a ton of time, but I'd love to touch on it.
Yeah. It's something, actually, this is a great question because I love to share these things. Maybe I'll start with volunteering and being a part of a part of a board. Is that what I didn't realize? And again, it's the hindsight thing is the value, not just kind of the volunteering aspect of it, but from a business startup standpoint, it is one of the best places. And let me unpack that a little bit. It's like when I jumped on the board for TIFF, is that I also went on the first couple of months I was just watching and seeing, but also like they needed a designer to design stuff. And I could be like, I put up my hand, I'm like, I can do that. I can make, design the badges and posters and all the rest of that stuff. I was able to contribute in what I did. And the benefit of that is that was a board of, I think, probably like 20 people. It was a big board. Again, it was a junior board. So it was a big board of probably about 20 people. But those were 20 professionals who got to see me and what I did, how I worked, and out of that, I've gotten some of my biggest contracts that people are like, how did you land for about a year and a half? I did all the in-store promotional pieces for KFC and Taco Bell. I feel like, sorry, you're an agency of like 2 people and you're doing all the in-store, all that stuff. How did you get that? I'm like, because I sat side by side with the woman at Pizza Hut and Taco Bell who ran that in Canada, and she saw how I worked and we became great friends. And she was just like, again, a lot of the creative industry just that comes down to competency. And are you a good human? Are you competent at what you do? Do you love, like, just relationship based? And I think we started a really great relationship. And she's like, hey, by the way, I just need something. Can you just blast out something small for me? I just need this. And that just turned into, next thing you know, I'm doing, cross-Canada promotion for their, like, with Lord of the Rings, their stuff that's going to be seen in every KFC, every drive-through menu, all the in-store for all of that for across Canada. I'm like, how, like this? And now that was just came from a single relationship. And I don't think I would have made that relationship if I didn't sit on that board. So part of it was, when people ask me like, how'd you get connected with so many people? How'd you find those people? I'm like, I just sat with them on a board. I contributed and people got to see how I worked they weren't paying me to do something. They just like, it was such a great thing because I was volunteering, but they were just seeing my process and everything about what I did. And in the back of their minds, like, oh, if we need something like that, this is who we're going to call. Because part of it too is when people can see what you do, and a lot of people kind of maybe don't realize this is a big thing with business, is that you're not just performing for the person who's hired you. Like, for instance, where I'm working with the marketing department, you're not just performing or just doing work, performing or just making something for that person in that marketing department. You're making it for them to look good to their bosses. And you know, part of our job and part of what I love to do, what's in the back of my mind is like, what is going to make that marketing director like look really good in front of their boss? Like, I always try to sprinkle in and try to fold in things to make them look like the superstar and rock star, because the more you make them look like the rock star, the more they're going to be like, this guy, I need to keep this guy on my team. And that's such a big business builder thing. So in that, going back to your sort of like the boards and everything else, is like, people just saw how I worked, how, you know, how well I performed, how I made everybody feel good on the team. Volunteering is great, you know, and events. I always loved events because it's moving people. It is sort of, again, when it comes to fundraising, this is also kind of the tactical kind of strategic mind of mine. Like, what can I do to get more people in the door? And I think maybe a lot of, maybe I'm unpacking something here that I really never thought of before. Great question. I love when questions kind of help you unpack sort of maybe some of the answers. Is that, and this has always been one of my beefs with agencies and awards and all that stuff. It's like, and I'll explain, is that with events, you know, if your marketing is going to work or not based on how many people are buying tickets or how many people are going to show up. Like, it's immediate how quickly your marketing, your branding, how it's positioned is going to work one way or another. Because a lot of people just do, like, an agency is just do stuff and like, hey, we're going to market this water and, you know, it's going to go out. Sales are there, but with an event, I guess maybe it's the adrenaline thrill rush of like, hey, is this going to work? And there's so many other people, there's so many other moving parts within that event that are hinging on whether or not it's going to be a success or how many people are going to buy tickets and how many we can get through the door. So for me, it was that excitement of like, hey, let's kind of do something. And that's where, you know, I really enjoyed the pressure, the stress, and it pushed me more as a designer, as a strategist, kind of think a lot more things through. And that's, you know, that for me was exciting. And I also got to see it live and people's responses like, hey, I showed up to do this. But I love the aspect of events because I'm incredibly social. I love bringing people together, especially if it's something meaningful that has meaning for me. So with the film festival I did, it was, you know, I loved film, I love conversation, I love discussion. I looked at what really people were engaged with, and thankfully right time, right place for that too. Yeah. So that's something.
I was thinking a little bit about that. I mean, when you and I chatted a couple weeks ago, you mentioned and correct me, I think what I recall is you suggesting that there was a period of time in the city where there was a lot of like convergence and a lot of, you know, people coming together and more of these kind of real intentional efforts to bring people together around core values maybe, or core experiences. And then maybe that dropped off a little, and probably a lot, obviously, to do with the pandemic. I'm just wondering what you're seeing in the landscape now, because I've definitely felt, and I've been a bit of a homebody, so some of it's me, but like a lull, and now I feel like I see it sort of coming back or attempting to, people trying to bring things together, and I have a thesis around that, but I'm just, from a Canadian perspective, from a local perspective, like how important are these things, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think they're super important because humans being in front of human, like let's just look at the difference between meeting someone at an event versus LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. You know, it's so different when you can. I think we need more of that. I think we need to realize like we need to just get out to an event and just start meeting people and talking with people. A lot of people just they can't do that, or that's not part of them. But I think it's such a core part of business of just getting out, meeting, and talking to people, because that, unlike any other platform or anything else, nothing checks all those boxes of how you can start a relationship better, quicker, faster than meeting someone in person, because you get to see who they are. You know, you can ask those personal questions, and no other platform does that. And I think we need to start doing that more. Yeah, you know, and
it's a funny thing. I think like there's a sort of separate conversation that we don't need to get into today that I'm hearing around, you know, younger generations not being in those like third places as much, right? Like not being in the workplace as much, not going to the bars as much, and not like not just being with people in that way as often.
You know, I heard a stat today that I can't remember the age group, but the young demographic, they were talking about Christmas and holiday parties, is that it was down 70%. 70% of kids within, let's even say 19 to, I'm again just making up, but even like 19 to 25, like 70% are not attending any Christmas or holiday parties, or it's the amount of events that they go to are down. I think on average it's close to 50.
Yeah.
But these guys are doing stats.
And some of it, obviously, this affects like personal growth and development. But I just think back to this time. It was my sort of coming of age time professionally. So I'm really thinking kind of from a business and professional growth perspective. Like, and my thesis, I think, is a little bit around the innovation waves that were happening. So like around 2008, 2009, social media emerging, new ways to connect online, which allowed you to kind of connect and invite new people and put on in-person real things and have more reach than you would have maybe had previously in meetups, et cetera. And now I think this wave of interest around emerging technology and AI is bringing some of these networks together, because it has felt lacking in Vancouver is what I hear. And I don't know, with some conferences that are happening and new little groups coming and popping up and starting to like collab. But anyhow, it's an interesting thing, because I do think it impacts people.
We did an event. Actually, we've done 2 this year with Tropoly. We had some partners. Nexus Night is what we've called them. We did one. We actually piggybacked on Web Summit. I actually piggybacked. We sort of like did a satellite event, or sort of like a off the side. We did it, and the response was freaking amazing, because everybody's like, it just is like, we need more of these. That's the thing, is we did this, and it was like a hockey stick of reserving or RSVPing. So there was almost like a hockey stick. All of a sudden it was really slow, because I think a lot of people still are not, like, still kind of need to get in gear with like, oh, I'm going to show up and do something. But the second it kind of, there was this point where all of a sudden it was like, not even a hockey stick. It was like just everybody was like, oh, okay, I'm here. I want to do this, and let's go. The common theme in all the conversations when we said, hey, what do you guys think about this? We're like, we need more of these. We're like, this is great. Maybe also too, people just get burned out of just really poorly planned events, or just mundane, or just something like it was just almost too much. It was kind of, it's almost like when there was a peak TEDx, like it felt like every single little area in the city had a TEDx. I was like, I can't see that many speakers. Like, how many people have interesting things to say, in all of it. So I think maybe we kind of, I would say peaked out, but it's just like, if you are going to do events, like, make them interesting, make them specific, make them niche a little bit. Like, why that's, really specific, not just as generic. So I think we do need more of these. We do need leaders to kind of start doing more events, because people want to get out. And I think once they realize the benefits of it, who they can meet, there's a really great, I bring this up, there's Scott Galloway has this, had a really great interview on Bill Maher, talking about young people. He's like, just go out. Oh, they're talking about young people and drinking, and how the alcohol consumption has gone way down. And he's just like, part of it's, again, not talking about business and alcohol, but it's just like, go out and meet people, and alcohol is that natural lubricant of just being able to go and talk about it. We're just not going out as people as much as we are. And he's like, that's where we go out and meet and connect and make mistakes, and kind of we get to kind of become figure out who we are, as a group and as a society. And we cannot feel the same things we feel, when we're messaging somebody online or anything else, and when we kind of meet someone interesting, or we have that conversation, that state of flow that people talk about, and those people you can talk to for hours. You can't, like, those connections really don't kind of happen online or digitally. Getting out and be able to probably be a part of a group discussion, and the endorphins and everything get released from that. And there's no other place for that. And I think we kind of, we're missing it. And when people like experience it again, I'm like, oh my God, this is what, rather than doom scrolling, for, my dopamine, I'd rather go out and meet. I think people need to kind of get comfortable with that again too.
Yeah. Canadians come together. Let's do it. Let's do it. I love that. I really want to thank you, Brady, for joining me on the show and talking about your vast experience in a variety of different things. I think it's really interesting. I will put your links in the show notes. Where's the best place for folks to connect with you?
Email, I guess. Email is probably the best, or actually LinkedIn is probably really where I show up the most, and I'm sharing the most. Both me and all my partners, we're there to LinkedIn is where you're gonna find our insights and just knowledge that we want to share and
Mhm.
show. So yeah, LinkedIn, 100%. I love the community that gets built there,
Yeah.
and let's talk there.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into Canada Now. I will put links in the show notes as well to Brady's book. And let's maybe close this on a little call to action. I think the call to action is like, I know the theme of this was about brand, but brand doesn't mean much without reputation. You can't really get much reputation unless you're out in the world.
Yep.
So, especially for younger folks who haven't played around with like getting out and meeting new people very much, do it. And I think it's also a call to action that there's a gap and that a feisty, scrappy entrepreneur might hear this and think maybe I can do something. So
I agree, 100%. Get out there.
yeah, get out there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Until next time.
Thank you.